All right, so now we're going to switch gears again. And before you do so, make sure if you haven't yet, go ahead and follow us here on Twitch. If you subscribe to the Twitch channel, you get no commercials anymore. You get free, you get to watch our videos without any commercial breaks. So if you just had a commercial break at the half hour mark, or are experiencing it right now, that's how you avoid it. Go ahead and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, there are no commercials there that we can control. At least not yet. I'm not a partner. So in that case, please do subscribe and click the bells and whistles and all of that so that you get updated every time we make a new video so that you're up to date on what's going on. Now, the question here is, how do we use distance, movement, and range when world building, when we are creating the world? And in Nycos, the mechanism, the world in around 80 days, purports to provide for you as a game master, if you follow the recommendations, within 80 days of the beginning of your process, you will have a functional, useful world. Well, one of the things that comes into that is how far away is far. If you say, oh, that enemy is far to the north, well, how far is that? Is that 1 mile? I mean, walking a mile in America today is to a lot of people a pretty tough challenge. If you say it's 10 miles away, that's pretty significant. If you say it's 50 miles away, you're talking a full days of activity to get from point A to point B. So how far away is far? And once you start to go down the road of determining your distances, your movement rate and range, you'll have to look at all of these questions that we're going to be talking about next. Well, next one we need to look at is, why do we need to move? If you're running an adventure series and the players are already familiar with the local barkeep and the local innkeeper, and they're familiar with where to get their horses shoed, and where to pick up extra ammunition for their bows, why move them? Why does the story have to become larger? The idea is that if you build out and you want to have the players move from location to location, you want to have a kind of a reason for that, because if it's something that therefore becomes easy to do, you'll be hard pressed to keep them in a singular location, and now you're going to have to keep leapfrogging ahead of them to figure out where they might go next. So just realize that there's no real need to race forward and build out if you're running a singular group of adventurers on an adventure sequence that is serialized and localized. But if you're going to move them, how are most folks traveling? When you say it's 3 days to the major city, by what means? If you're on foot, it certainly wouldn't take as long as if you were using a cart and wagon, especially if it's a well-laden wagon, you could actually move slower. Or conversely, if you're going mounted on a horse, that could be much faster. So when you say it's 3 days away, what methodology for transit are you pursuing? If you want them to have a real understanding, and I just realized my speakers might be out, so no, I want to make sure I'm good. So if we're looking at the way they're going to travel, certainly having a steed would be helpful. But then the question is begged, are there roads? If they're going from point A to point B and there are no roads, it's going to be pretty much forget about it with your wagons. You're going to have to trailblaze to find yourself a course to get there. And while that is itself a great adventure, if you didn't think about that before you started, then the players are going to feel the frustration of not being aware of where they are or how much they've progressed against that storyline. The next thing to take into account is climate, weather, and conditions. So, for example, if it's an arid condition and there's heavy, dry winds like there are here in Southern California for a third of the year, is that being taken into account? Or are the players going to run into the dangers of that on their route? Being able to think this direction and think about these questions as you build lets you get a stronger feel for what is as I said, far away to the north. Additionally, you want to look at whether or not this adventuring is being done in a realistic fashion or a fantastic fashion. If you're looking for a realistic situation, then yes, it's far to the north. Might be 3 days rugged climbing, or perhaps it's a smooth road, but it's 100 miles. So the idea of determining what's realistic and what's fantastic, perhaps they will be inventive and come up with a way to get airborne steeds, or perhaps they will find or look for the means of doing magical movement. Certain speed spells and certain things like that can reduce the time traveled and therefore make these locations much more accessible. Now, once you start working about this, then you got to start worrying about the other things that are going to be necessary to understand. What are the accesses to resource? If we are traveling down this road, what are the places where we could stop to get fresh water, fresh horses if we're in a hurry? What are the parameters for magical materials? How are we going to get the components that we need? All of these discussions over access means that you need to start thinking about the logistics of the communities that you're building. And while there's no requirement to follow those kind of things, nonetheless, it is kind of handy and builds for some great side quests for the players to realize, we are going to have to get some rutabaga because that one guy only uses rutabaga in his magics, so we need to go hunt some rutabagas in the field coming up. Next would be how urban, rural, or wilderness is the adventure path that we have to take to get to that place far to the north. If we haven't mapped it out, if we haven't figured out where it is, we're only now doing that math. How much of it's going to be spent in a town? Are there any towns on this road? And if there are, why are they there? Are they crossroads for another major thoroughfare? Are they the end of the road? Perhaps they are as far away from civilization as you can get. So now beyond that, you're moving into frontier. If you didn't have that thought through in advance of building your session, you want to definitely do that so that you know so you won't be surprised. The players, it's good for them to be surprised, not so much for you as a storyteller. Also, when you want to talk about this, you also want to consider your player input, because if your players are doing a lot to build out the material they're going to have, they know they're going to be going across the mountain range, and they are bringing the wagon, so they know they're going to be doing some trailblazing and possibly do some portages, and therefore they're taking all of that into account. You want to be able to associate that appropriately for them as players, because you're rewarding them for their activity of investing in your story. And then realize that when it comes down to it, all of these things can come down to how fast you want them to get there. If it literally was you wanted them to go far to the north, but you wanted to be there and start the entire session on the edge of the area far to the north, then that's simply a matter of what I've come to call, in the magic of my world, hand-wavium. You're the game master. Yeah, we traveled. Now, if the players have put a lot of effort into the expanse and the travel planning, it's kind of pointless to deprive them of what they are expecting. So make sure that you're getting plenty of feedback from the players on that, because perhaps what they really want is the grind. Some people simply want to go through the motions so that they can feel as if their character is progressing down that path. In fact, a lot of the adventuring opportunities for a group will grant new skill opportunities and new ways to use the skills they already have to advance them on the way. So don't feel like you have to ignore all of these if the players are seeking it. So just realize that we have the opportunity as game masters to provide them the happy medium between full out hand-wavium and the perfect grind that they expect. So, wow, I got a lot accomplished in that short period of time. I do believe the only thing I had, did I do this one already? Yes, I did that one already. All I have to say at this point is I want to thank you for being with us. This is NycosRPG. Nycos is the story of Nycos is a 12,000-year-old tale that's been 50 years in the making. I'm a game master who's been behind the shield and run virtually every game mechanism out there and virtually every genre you can think of. If you want to be part of our community, make sure you subscribe to this channel to get away from the commercials. You can also follow us so you get updates on whenever we do our new releases here on Twitch. And of course, do check out our YouTube page at NycosRPG over there. And the Nycos mechanism is a skills-oriented, elegant, intuitive game mechanism that allows the players to pursue their own progression without any game master influence. It is dialogue driven, which means it's superior for theater of the mind, and particularly we found that it's really useful for online play because it gets past a lot of things, yet it still has cinematic and dramatic combat, and it all occurs right here between the years. So thank you for participating. This has been Nycos RPG. That's not your clumsy old system, but Nycos RPG. And the difference between them is absolutely fun. I will see you all next time. Do remember we do broadcasts at 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. Monday through Friday. So we will be back tomorrow. So watch for that